Jumping along to Northanger Abbey, I'm skipping about here in terms of the order of the books. Northanger Abbey, I really just wanted to call this to your attention because it is such an absolutely charming description of a child. This is Catherine Morland, the hero of Northanger Abbey, and if any of you haven't read Northanger Abbey, go home and read it right away because it's a lovely, lovely one of Austen's novels. And sometimes the one, at least when I've been talking to people that they seem to have missed out on, is another one, the one about the castle or something, instead of Northanger Abbey. Yeah, that one. Anyway, Catherine Morland at the beginning is thought of as a fairly unpromising girl. She had a thin, awkward figure, a sallow skin without color, dark, lank hair, and strong features. So much for her person. Well, that's kind of how I probably felt at age 10, you know, so much for my person. She was fond of all boys' plays, and greatly preferred cricket, not merely to dolls, but to the more heroic enjoyments of infancy, nursing a dormouse, feeding a canary bird, or watering a rose bush. I think it's pretty clear where Austen's preferences would be too at this point. She never could learn or understand anything before she was taught, and sometimes not even then, for she was often inattentive and occasionally stupid. The day which dismissed the music master was one of the happiest of Catherine's life. Her taste for drawing was not superior. She did what she could in that way by drawing houses and trees, hens and chickens, all very much like one another. So far, I think she sounds like a pretty nice, ordinary girl. You know, she loves chickens and things and doesn't really like her practicing her music. Writing and accounts she was taught by her father, French by her mother. Her proficiency in either was not remarkable, and she shirked her lessons in both whenever she could. What a strange, unaccountable character, for with all these symptoms of profligacy at 10 years old, she had neither a bad heart nor a bad temper, was seldom stubborn, scarcely ever quarrelsome, and very kind to the little ones, with few interruptions of tyranny. She was, moreover, noisy and wild, hated confinement and cleanliness, and, my favorite part, loved nothing so well in the world as rolling down the green slope at the back of the house. So that definitely sounds like me as a kid. I loved rolling down any green slope I could find and getting grass stains on my clothes. Such was Catherine Morland at 10. We're told that later on she starts to amend and want to curl her hair and go to balls and has an interest in young men, and eventually even starts reading novels, which really gets the story going. In contrast to this portrait of a bold and rather tomboyish child, we have Fanny Price in Mansfield Park. There is a lot of divided opinion about Fanny. Fanny really gets people going. Fanny is not Lizzie, let's put it that way. Fanny is more like a typical Victorian heroine. She's very meek, she's very mild, she's very self-effacing. If you've seen Patricia Rosema's film Mansfield Park, she's nothing like that. Absolutely nothing. It has almost nothing to do with her, really. She's kind of the antithesis of that. So this is the scene where Fanny first comes to her uncle's house, and as happened in Austen's own family with Edward being adopted by a wealthy relative, that's what's happening with Fanny. So at 10 years old, she, almost certainly without consulting her at all, is being plucked from her family, who admittedly are poorer, and plunked down into her uncle's much better off family at Mansfield Park. Now, this would be traumatic enough for any child, but particularly for Fanny, who is just a mouse of a girl. Very, very sweet and very retiring. So I think that everyone can relate to how she feels at this point. Fanny Price was at this time just 10 years old, and though there might not be much in her first appearance to captivate, there was at least nothing to discuss her relations. Well, that's good. It's always good not to discuss one's relations, don't you think? She was small of her age, with no glow of complexion, nor any other striking beauty, exceedingly timid and shy, and shrinking from notice. So she comes into the house, her aunt and uncle receive her, Sir Thomas and Lady Bertram. Lady Bertram, by the mere aid of a good-humoured smile, became immediately the less awful character of the two. So that's all she's really looking for, is someone to smile at her, someone to be kind to her. And this is my favorite line here. Nothing comforts her. Oddly enough, she's not comforted by her Aunt Norris telling her to be a good girl. and the well-meant condescensions of her uncle. And it doesn't even do much for her to be asked to sit on the couch beside her aunt with her powder. And vain was even the sight of a gooseberry tart towards giving her comfort. So you know it's bad when not even a special treat will comfort you. She's feeling pretty awful. And the only thing that does end up making her feel better is that her cousin Edmund comes to the rescue, not in that scene, but a little bit later on, and realizes that all that's wrong is that she misses her family, and particularly her brother William, and she has no means to write to them and is too shy to ask. This reminds me of when I took a math exam, and I had such a bad cold, my nose was running, and all I could think about was, I have to go in with that nose, but I was so shy I couldn't ask the teacher, can I please go and get a tissue, because I just couldn't bring myself to do that. So this is Fanny, who's just not even able to say, could I please have some paper to write to my brother? So I think that as much as Austen's capable of being very, very biting in her writing when she wants to, she's also capable of being very sympathetic, and Fanny, as a child, is presented to us as a figure who calls forth immediately, I would say, kind of our natural sympathy, the way that Mary Musgrove is supposed to naturally respond to her own child. I'll finish up with this brief mention from an unfinished novel called The Watsons, just because there's such an adorable boy in it that I can't stop without mentioning him. In fact, I read in one book him referred to as the only charming child in Austen's work. I'm not sure it's true, and I can't for the life of me now find where I read that. But this is a little boy, Charles Blake. He's 10 years old, and he's at a ball, and Miss Osborne, who's of course older, she's a young woman, has promised to dance with him. She's going to dance the first few dances, and he's just beside himself. Oh yes, we have been engaged this week, cried the boy. Not engaged to be married, but engaged to dance. And we are to dance down every couple. But what do you think? Miss Osborne turns him down to go dance with a soldier instead, a man. And he is just devastated. He stood the picture of disappointment with crimson cheeks, quivering lips, and eyes bent on the floor. And they're going to start crying when you hear this. Though he contrived to utter with an effort of boyish bravery, "Oh, I do not mind it." It was very evident by the unceasing agitation of his features that he minded it as much as ever. Emma, that's Emma Watson, not Emma Woodhouse, did not think or reflect. She felt and acted. "I shall be very happy to dance with you, sir, if you like it." And Charles being provided with his gloves and charged to keep them on, they joined the set. So once again, the person who responds naturally, who responds lovingly to the child, is the one that we're very clearly meant to identify with and admire, as opposed to Miss Osborne. And finally, the last thing I wanted to mention is that he's quite pleased with Emma after this, and he wants her to come over. What could you imagine? That's exactly what a child would do. When I see him, he comes to our house, and he says, "When should we come to Osborne Castle?" That's not his house, but she says, "Never, probably. I'm not acquainted with the family." "But you might come to Wickstead and see Mamma, and she can take you to the castle. There is a monstrous, curious stuffed fox there, and a badger. Anybody would think they were alive. It is a pity you should not see them." So I think Charles is a pretty sweet little guy.